Welcome all. I'm Olari, head of Accelerate Estonia. Today we're going to have an online event, Future Talks, Innovation Dissected. Last year, while attending in several conferences and summits, people brought up all the time that we are living in a golden age of innovation. This is the moment. Today, we have to do it because all counterparts are ready for actual collaboration. But is it actually so? Today, we're going to find out. We have assembled the all-star lineup, people who have given their fair share of innovation to Estonia and to the world as a whole. People who have been innovative, and hopefully they still are. We'll see. Accelerate Estonia we belong under the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications, and we are 1 foot in a private sector and 1 foot in public sector. So we are the bridge, the collaborative bridge between those two sectors. And today we're going to have 2 panels. One panel includes leaders from public sector, and the other one includes leaders from a private sector. And those innovative people will give us insights, and it should be very interesting to see how those 2 different sectors will see innovation and how they will see how should we implement it and what the future will bring and what will be the barriers we must tackle and overcome to actually achieve our goals. Also, now a little commercial thing. Accelerate Estonia is recruiting at the moment. So all of you who have ideas or know people who have ideas which needs government to actually really exist or implement, then let us know. Our applications are open. And we can start with our first panel. So hopefully you find it interesting, insightful, and also you can participate as well by sending us the questions. But it will be introduced from our first moderator. Thank you and enjoy.
Good morning, afternoon, or also evening. I don't know where you are watching us. I'm ready to kick off the very first panel discussion. And as my lovely boss also already mentioned, then the first panel discussion includes the leaders from the public sector. So like he brought it out also in his opening remarks, with Accelerate Estonia, we would like to make sure that we are creating this kind of, I would say, the golden time. And I will get back to this, what the golden time actually means for innovators to really do some kind of things that have an impact and are kind of, I would say, even like we can call them crazy ideas. But the question that I have, especially for my panelists and the leaders that are here with me on the stage, is to understand also who is actually responsible for running innovation. And I'm pretty sure that at the end of this discussion for 40 minutes, we will actually have the answer much more clear, who will be responsible for really running innovation in the public sector. So together with me here on the stage, I have some incredible setup of speakers. They have something all in common, which is the word former. And so we have the former President of Estonia, Mr. Toomas Hendrik Ilves. Welcome. So we also have the former Minister of Information Technology and Entrepreneurship, Sutt. Welcome as well. And then last but not least, we have the former Chief Information Officer of Estonian Government, Taavi Kotka. So welcome. But before we start, let's also agree that all of our people that are joining online are going to be very open-minded today. And by open-minded, I mean that you're also more engaged to the discussion. You can see on the screen as well the Slido numbers, the code there, and you can type in your questions so that I can also use your questions and ask them from our specialist leaders here on the stage with me. And I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to miss that chance to ask your questions as well. But without further ado, let me start by asking, what's the definition of the golden time in innovation, Mr. President?
Well, I mean, I'll talk about innovation in the public sector because in the private sector it happens when it happens, and there's not really it's really a function of the market. In case of the government or of the public sector, the golden times, and I think there have been several, have been when the leaders in government actually listen to people's ideas, which presumes not only listening, but actually knowing enough about what your people are talking about to actually make an informed decision, which then means that you need to have at the top level of decision making people who have a clue. And that's not exactly a common thing, that if we're talking about innovation, especially in IT, that people at the top have a clue about what's going on. And this is, I think, is a big issue that we have faced. And we've only really had spurts in innovation when the people at the decision-making level have understood what the tech or innovative people are talking about.
Do you have a clue, Andres?
No.
You don't.
But I think to your question, why it is now a golden time, I think the world is facing major disruptive changes in the technology, but also geopolitically. And this always opens an opportunity. And I very much agree to what President Ilves said. What is needed, these things to happen and materialize, is to have creative leaders who are willing to take risk, leaders who have global ambition, and there are big number of them, I think, also in Estonia. So is it enough in the public sector? I don't know. I think it's a bit of setting the standard and ambition right. But if we don't take this golden opportunity, then we will miss out big time. So for me, it is a bit of like going back to 1990s in terms of risk appetite and ambition, or going back to 2000s, the same story. So 2020s, just let's do it.
Taavi, do you feel like we need to go back to like 30 years of time and have the ambitions that we had back in that time, or do you feel that Estonia currently has the golden time in innovation, because you've been working as the Chief Information Officer for the Estonian Government, and you have been designing things that are really well known in the world, such as also the e-residency. But like, how do you feel about this today? Because you are currently working from the private sector perspective. What is needed that companies could use this golden time, if this is called golden time right now?
I don't know if it's golden time. I would like to argue that one thing you cannot do, or you shouldn't do, is listen to the people. Because if you listen to the people, then if, let's say, 25 years ago or 20 years ago, like the decision makers would listen to the people, we wouldn't have ID card.
Okay, but this is the old line by Henry Ford, that if you listen to the people, you would have a better horse.
Exactly.
But the point is that you have to listen to the right people.
True, and that's why I agree that golden times only happens when the people who can decide, and those are politicians, have they have a belief. And they listen to the right people. And they take the risk not to listen or hear what the public is saying. I mean, for years, the same ID card example, like even the tech journalist, famous tech journalists today, they admit that they were against of those reforms when they happened. And it was silly. But in that moment, they couldn't see the vision, like they couldn't understand like what the future brings us. And that's why like golden times only happen when the ones who actually can do and can make a change happen just listen right people and don't listen the criticism only.
Well, I would add that. I mean, basically, when you look at sort of two critical periods, one was when Estonia started to to digitize all the schools, which we did basically 15 years before everyone else. I mean, when I proposed it, I was not a decision maker, but I mean, everyone hated the idea. But fortunately, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Education said, well, we can try it, which was fine. And then later on, when the really big thing of the ID card and digital identities came in, again, it was a time when the government was willing to take a risk. And then for many years, we had governments that didn't want to risk anything. And basically, when I was in government, two of us had to fight with the government in order to get things done, because they were like, what? And then they basically ended up saying, well, the president's saying it, we might as well just keep him happy.
But let's try it concept, I think, is really important, and oftentimes it just falls apart or falls away, that people are not ready to take a risk at the political level. And back then, I think what is also a big difference compared to today, for many there was nothing to lose and everything to gain. And now I think we have a much broader circle of people in a society who think that they have a lot to lose and taking additional risk even more so. But if you don't take any risk, you will lose for sure.
But if you could open this a little more, like what do we have to lose when we try something new, especially like so
power.
maybe
Power.
The power.
You lose the next election.
If you do something that is failing, then it's risky. Like if you were working in a position of being the IT minister, did you feel the fear in anyhow that like you were taking some of the decisions that sounded very risky for you, that you were kind of reflecting this to the elections?
Elon Musk is not terribly popular at the moment, and for good reasons, but I think there was something but he was certainly right when he said that, look, if I don't crash a number of rockets before sending them to the orbit, I think I have taken too little risks. So if you ask, did I take enough risk? I mean, that's for the others to judge. But I think what had happened in our case certainly was that we have been pushing ahead with the new products and innovation, but much less investing in cybersecurity. And then you can't really do one in isolation from another. But this has now, I think, changed. So you could actually argue conversely that instead of pushing money for next upgrade, for a product or service the government provides, I pushed more money for cybersecurity. You could argue that I took less risk, but maybe I created more opportunities for even better risk taking going forward.
Well,
I think that basically there is a fundamental problem with government approaches to tech, and it really gets very basic, and it's not even risk-taking. Well, it is risk-taking, but basically, we're in a new world in which the technology that we need to do things requires constant upgrading. Governments are used to one-off expenditures. So you want to build a highway, you put in X billion into the highway, and then for 30 years you basically don't have to do much except fix the potholes. So they are governments up till tech have always been in capital expenditure or CapEx mode. Soon as you get into tech, and tech is expensive, you have to go into operational expenditures and OpEx, because what worked 3 years ago, which was good enough 3 years ago, is not going to be good enough in the next year. And therefore, you have to constantly put money in. Now, that is something that governments have such problems with, thinking that, no, this is not a one-off. I'm not going to have a 4-lane highway from this town to that city. I'm going to have to every year upgrade what I'm doing, because otherwise it will become useless, especially in cybersecurity, but in all other areas as well.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to reflect as well, Taavi?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that that thinking needs to be, reinvented, but it's just money. So there's another aspect that I think all countries are struggling, and that's the motivation. So what is the upside of any innovation for a government officer? Yes, 30 years ago, like a career as a government officer wasn't like, say, so much developed, so people didn't care about so much what happens next. But yeah, I mean, politically you can lose next elections, but you also, if you do something good, you can show off and you can get more votes. I mean, being an IT minister is actually quite a popular position, like in Estonia. But for a government officer, like if you do a radical reform, and sorry, but politicians don't do reform, they decide, but it's delivered by the officers. Like, so if they do a reform, what's their upside? Downside is there. If it fails, you are fired. But what's your upside?
You're not fired.
I mean, like...
no, you're not fired.
But what's your upside? I mean, like, we have examples from Skies and others, like, where you get fired, like, if you don't get things done. But what is your upside? And that's like a fundamental problem, like the same CapEx-OpEx problem. It's also a fundamental problem that there is no like tangible upside for the people who actually should deliver the reform. And that's a problem.
But this, I think I agree. It's a crucial point, and that eventually boils down to the leadership. So, what is a line or a direction a minister or whoever sort of in the top line is going to give to the people in the ministry? And if I think back on my own career in a central bank, in a public service elsewhere, I mean, for me it was what was always a driver was to build something new, and then if you have a leadership who is enabling the building and any building of something is to a different degree also including innovation, because you are not just building something what is a copy or a cheap copy of what is available elsewhere, but something what should be better than what does exist already. How to give it, I think that is something where we have become a bit too lazy in giving this freedom to people in the ministers. But I'm a young politician, so maybe I'm sort of thinking in the different categories still.
Yeah, just to add to my previous, like, leadership is great, but I'm actually talking about money. Like, what if a team of government officers delivers something that the country truly needs? Like, and they do it great, and they get a lot of criticism, but they observe this and they continue, and in the end of the day, it's a good outcome. And what if they actually earn like millions, the same way like startups earn millions? Like, so
I agree. This is the. I mean, I've been arguing for this for years.
And there are models for this.
Singapore model.
Why you not use them? Like, so.
I mean, we should have. I mean, I would say what I think works very well in Singapore, and why they have one of the lowest corruption in the world, is that you actually pay your senior civil servants a lot, which means two things. One is they're not corrupt, but more importantly, the best and the brightest will tend to go into the private sector, where, I mean, especially in tech, this is a problem around the world. Why would you go work for the government to work at not a bad salary, but okay, not so great either. Maybe you can buy kind of a middle-level car. But if you then hop over to the private sector with your skills and your innovative thinking, you can actually become very rich. Now, what I've seen in your case and basically, I think all of the CIOs we've had in Estonia have been people who have been in the private sector and come into the public sector for some time because it's an exciting thing to do. But that's a very intangible kind of soft thing. I mean, I think the CIOs we've had in this country have all been rather strange people, no offense, but I mean, they actually think that, I can do something interesting in government, whereas most people who have the requisite skills to be a chief information officer, to basically run the thing and make bring in innovative change, those skills, you know that you can just become a billionaire or multimillionaire by staying in the private sector. So you want to pull these people in. So you need to give them some kind of positive reinforcement, which basically comes down to higher salaries.
Yeah, but just to follow on that point, I think the concept of a revolving door is really important. So that we get people in and out between the public and private sector, because then both sides know how the other side operates. And that's enormously useful. In some cases, people say, look, I mean, this leads to suboptimal outcomes or corruption, but it could. But I think the net benefit is by far bigger. And then if you have good examples of people who entered the sort of from a private to public and then exited again, or other way around, and this is a bit also a role model, but you can actually do something and achieve. And I think, I mean, you need to pay in a public sector like competitive salary compared to a market, but to get rich, depending, of course, on what is the criterion for being rich, I think you need to go to private and to take the risk and then work it out.
I disagree.
Yeah, that's
Again,
okay
like,
to disagree.
I have just worked with different models, like how you. I mean, you can actually innovate in the public sector also. It means that the funds where you actually can get rich only open up when certain outcomes and goals have been reached, etc. So and it might take years, etc. But there are different models. Like
certainly there are, but
yeah.
if you sort of set the bar not in billions, but somewhere in the millions or a multiple of millions, I think you will never end up in bonuses or compensation packages in the public sector.
Yeah. No, there are some negative examples in Europe, especially, where people who are in high positions of power go to work for some Russian oil company.
Yeah, that's true.
So, or gas company. So, I mean, that's the problem.
But that's not really innovative.
That's true. That's the opposite, because you're just pumping something.
But if we have been talking about, like, especially now, people and finding the right people to kind of run this innovation. But if you think about the ideas, like the new ideas, like what to do and everything, when it comes to Accelerate Estonia, where we work, what we do, and basically, like, our client is the private sector company. That actually has something that they want to do, some crazy ideas that they want to run in the public sector, and we will help them. We will help them by the public sector perspective here. But how do you feel? Who is actually responsible for, like, catching these ideas? Should it be that way that we're doing, so that we are helping to find this kind of private, like we are letting the private sector companies to reach out to us and tell, like, okay, this is what needs to be changed, or again, what kind of role, like, the public sector should play there in order to really catch the ideas that needs to be changed? Because maybe, like, if we start with Andres, with you, like, you've been working as an IT minister, and I'm pretty sure, like, there is tons of new ideas coming on the table all the time. When it comes to validation of the ideas, like, there's plenty of crazy and cool stuff happening all the time. How to really, like, know and validate the ideas as well from the public sector perspective?
There was one thing I learned pretty quickly in the IT ministry, or being a minister. If something is not working, for example, in the portfolio of the Ministry of Social Affairs, when everybody is looking at me, okay, so this is an IT problem, you should solve it. I said, look, hold on. I'm not running the budget nor the services in the Ministry of Social Affairs. There is always a product owner who does it, and that's not oftentimes defined. So what I think we need more is clearly assigned product and service owners who then are not thinking only in terms of what technology is the best to run this product or service, but what this product or service makes good for a customer on the other side. And that oftentimes is not in the ministry, it's more on the authority who is, be it the tax administration or other authority who is facing the client. I think the biggest change in terms of benefit, I believe, we can achieve in the public sector is if we become much more sort of a client-centric, solving the sort of giving a better customer satisfaction, because we have already digitalized 99%. I mean, and then the next question is this service good enough? What else could we build on it? And then I think if you have people in the front line facing the client and say, okay, look, this thing actually here doesn't work in the right way. Let's flip it. Let's do something different. So it needs to really come, I think, also from a bottom-up side.
There's two broad points. One of them is that actually, if you take the three largest economies in the sort of free world, which would be the United States, Germany, and Japan, they are actually the ones with the worst, I hate to say this, but the worst public services in the developing world, digitally.
True.
They are, and the problem with those three countries is that they have not digitized. The innovation has all come from countries that are not the most, the richest, largest, most successful. So, I mean, this is a hint for those countries that are not at the, not one of those three. But I mean, the level of digitization of public services in those three countries is incredibly bad. I mean, I won't waste your time talking about it, but after being in office, I spent 3.5 years living in Palo Alto, California. I was at Stanford. And the level of public service, digital public services there was something like maybe 1950s. Everything was paper. Everything was paper, and it took forever. And then I started to really appreciate Estonia at that point, even though it's not nearly as rich as, especially Silicon Valley. But you think about the sort of the capital of innovation in the world is Silicon Valley, and there the public sector works like the 1950s.
But it's an interesting question. Why it is so?
Well, there are many reasons, but I think that, the innovation is all in the private sector, and the public sector simply will not move, nor will the political level move either, because they're afraid to.
So from practical perspective, there are certain innovations that you can't do just from in private sector or in public sector. Very good example is the same identity thing. In US, trust issue, the identity issue is not solved, which means that the fact that you can use Apple ID or Google ID, that's not your identity. And that's why you actually can't build a proper digital society. That's broken. Several countries who have tried it on a government side, let's do the government ID, like Japan, failed. So it has to be a collaboration. So in many cases, it has to be collaboration, especially if it's a core infrastructure element. And there, governments need to play along. Another part is that we have very let's call them small size innovations and significant. Let's say the Starship robots on BAF phase. They needed to test those robots. But running self-driving objects on a pathway was illegal in the world. So it's important that I need to find a place where I actually can rapidly start testing my stuff. But you can look at this in a closed environment. It's small, and here, obviously, government should be very flexible and work with them. On the same time, EdTech, some kind of EdTech company coming in and saying that I'm saving the world because I have this new model now. I mean, we shouldn't rush chasing any new idea completely. So there is a balance, but I think the essence here is that government needs to constantly watch that the infrastructure and the environment for innovation is there, and also give some examples that big things can happen. I mean, I'm actually super fan of our tax department. The fact that they have automated the level of what they already can control. As an entrepreneur, I can see, I can feel that. I'm like, how do you know that? It's something that definitely we should encourage. Plus, I mean, look at our tax system, the income tax solution, for example, for the businesses. This has been a very radical innovation that has helped our country a lot during the last 30 years. But are we ready, for example, to ask from the chat GPT that what should be the next tax reform for Estonia, and if there is a response, like, are we willing to follow that? Like,
but if I may come back to this as well, like you started some time ago now your new company, Ghost, that you also have your sweater on.
Hoodie.
This you did.
Hoodie.
Oh, hoodie, sorry.
Okay.
Well, also like the company itself has a very different perspective on doing things differently. Like in a point where you understand that you're bringing something that is innovative also in terms of what you do. How do you also like? What kind of reaction do you feel from the government, or like what do you expect from the government if you have come up with something like this? Especially like you brought it out, like if it want to test the new solutions, sometimes like the legislative sense needs to be changed. Do you feel like here in Estonia this is like a simple process to reach out to the decision makers and really say, okay, this needs to be changed? Or do you feel like Estonia is currently in a pace where we really are able to test things and provide this market as we like to call it, like as a test bed in order to try out if the new ideas are really working?
There's a very short answer to this question. Answer is that I think more than 90% of the companies don't need anything from the government. And if they need something from the government, this would be a huge friction entering to the next market. So if your business, if your solution is dependent of some laws, like look at Uber, like they changed the world, they changed the whole taxi world and created Bolt, like because like as an example, like so from my current perspective, I don't need anything from the government. Please, like step aside, like just let me be, and let me do my stuff. But like for the extra 5% or 10%, like that these innovation needs some kind of regulative part, like we just have to be open-minded, but not too open. Like,
well, I would say that one of the biggest problems in the European Union today, being one of the biggest fans of the European Union, is that they want to innovate by regulating. It seems like that's not how it's going to work. I mean, it's instead of letting things happen, they're already legislating ahead what you can't do. And instead of waiting until it happens and say, okay, that didn't work out so well, maybe like we don't do that. Not saying, okay, we think this could go wrong and therefore we won't let this happen. Well, there may be more ulterior motives, like we know this works, but this would not be good for our economy. And I mean, Uber is a good example of that. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, the government side has to think different. I'll give you one other example. There was, I've been sort of advising governments for a long time on, things they should do. And one of the talking points I give is that this radically reduces corruption at the government level. And then one country, which you also know well, and the person who said this, said, we can't do that. There's no way we can do that. I said, why not? He said, you have to understand, we pay our civil servants so little that because we assume they're taking money for providing the services. And if we actually reduce corruption, we will have to start paying them real money. I mean, you go, what?
And that's true. That's true in many countries.
Yeah. On the regulation point, there has been actually a number of cases where the industry has been asking for a regulation, particularly when we talk about sort of more innovative fields, which be it in fintech or crypto, exactly, or NFT or other things. So this is where I think we need to give a frame, but like flexible enough so that you can.
Actually, it's a very good example because. I know
I was shocked. I never, usually, when I interacted with the banks, everybody, other industries, traditional industries, stop regulating too much. And then I go to other crowd and they say, look, we need regulation. Yeah, but there is a point.
Yeah, but to be honest, like last year, even more, we have heard a lot about crypto. Crypto needs more regulations and let's regulate more, etc. And I think it's true. We have to regulate it more and better. But to be honest, when those talks started and we understood that we have a problem with crypto firms here, I was actually proud because statistically to hear that more than 50% of all the crypto companies in the world were registered and run here. So like 50% of the crypto innovation actually happened here. Yes, among those were like scammers and like the bad part, but that's our powerful thing. Like we should learn from this and quickly react, etc. But definitely we shouldn't do that. Okay, we close it off.
Yeah, but that's unfortunately the direction Europe has gone. I mean, I would say there's one more step, which is that, in fact, governments have to be intelligent enough to say that we need this law in order to innovate. And the example I would give is that Estonia was the first country to pass a digital signature law, which is the sine qua non, the absolute beginning of a serious digital governance structure. Without a digital signature law, you can't do it. Now, people didn't understand what the hell a digital signature law was when we pushed it through the government, but we said, look, we need this. And so the government said, okay. But once, I mean, they said, okay, we'll do it. But then the government, once it did it, it enabled Estonia to digitize in like leaps and bounds. But you need that law to enable innovation.
Yep. That's the infrastructure part.
Well, we're running out of time. I have like tons of questions to ask from you here, and especially like the relations with like public and private sector. Also, like we know actually the big like innovation cases where there wouldn't be a relation between the public and private sector, because I feel like whatever solution comes to the market, in one point eventually it will still like affect the public sector or needs some kind of public sector, either a chain support or something. But this would need another at least half an hour discussion. So maybe I would take one of the questions from the audience as well, and this is a good point also to like wrap up our discussion here. Predicting the future, which is our favorite thing to obviously to do. So there is a question: which technologies and changes it is appropriate to start adapting right now, and what the public sector should be ready for now and immediately? What kind of technologies are?
I can take.
Yes, let's do the round from that side here.
Yeah. So one of interesting aspects or like findings I had when I finished my job as government CIO was that we are one of those rare countries, together with China and Singapore, where the data sources are truly connected. So you can reach like any data source because we have unique identifiers and stuff, like we can combine data. And that's a powerful thing. So you can basically start look for different kind of dependencies and two different types of conclusions. And then I understood that data is not an obstacle anymore. The question is like, we don't have enough smart people anymore who can ask smart enough questions that this data could solve. And I'm very positive and hopeful that the way that let's say our government officers and also innovative people are capable to learn the new AI tools and start to ask more and smarter questions. And I'm also, would like to see that there are or there will be models that can use our let's say public registries and to let's say my questions what you actually learn from the 5th grade, how it influences your salary when you are 35, type of things. But I mean, it might be a silly example, but I just want to show you the different level. What could be the best tax system for Estonia, for example?
Andres?
I'm not a technology guy. I'm just a regular, ordinary user. For me, what is important is an open mind and curiosity to try different things and technologies. I mean, there are tech people, other people out there who come up with the products and services, and I'm very happy to test them. And I'm also very much in line with what you, Taavi, said. I think that the biggest skill what we all need to develop is a critical thinking and questioning everything what you are proposed. either by ChatGPT or somebody else, like by Taavi or by Toomas or by Anett, but you just need to have a critical thinking and question, does it really make sense? If we can develop this part of our intelligence, then I think we will also be okay with artificial intelligence. If not, then we are in trouble.
Mr. President?
Well, I would say, taking off also, it's related to what Taavi said. Basically, we have, in the digital era, reached a point that we completely revolutionize the way governance and bureaucracy and public services are run. Because from the beginning of the first bureaucracy 5,000 years ago, where you just had to do simple taxes, until about 20 years ago, government was a serial or sequential process. You have a piece of paper which goes to an office, which goes to another office, and people read it and say, put a stamp on it or say yes or no. What we have since 2000, basically, you can process things in parallel at the same time. We are no longer medium dependent. We're not dependent on paper. We're not dependent on faxes. We're not dependent on even PDFs. We can do things simultaneously in parallel. This is a fundamental rethink of how governance works, because it has always worked step by step in a series sequential process. This requires lots of people to rethink how we do governance. And we have done some of that in Estonia. I don't think we're only scratching the surface, looking at how you can do completely different forms of government, knowing that you can do things simultaneously with data, with decision-making, from different disparate sources, across ministries, all of these things which in the serial processing form we would never do. And so I think we're at the beginning of a new form, the beginning of a new stage of public services, if we use the brains to do it.
So let's use the brains. I guess we could continue that discussion with these three experts on a stage for the next at least half a day without any question here. But I have to wrap it up from my side here. So I want to say a massive thank you for everybody listening to the first panel discussion. But don't go anywhere yet, because we still have my woman crush coming on a stage, Sandra Särav, who is the Undersecretary in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communication. And she will reflect together with private sector experts also what's their expectation for the state. But from my side, a massive thank you for our experts on the stage with me here. And let's jump to the next panel discussion.
Hi, good afternoon on my behalf as well. I would like to welcome you here this afternoon, and I would like to introduce myself also as a former someone. So the previous panel was introduced of former presidents and CIOs and ministers. I'm a former tech company person. I'm a former Meta and former Bolt advisor, and now I found my way back to the Estonian public sector. And here I am working as the Undersecretary of State for Business and Consumer Environment. So you might say, I know a few things about tech companies and I know a few things about how public sector works. And hopefully this way I can lead you to a proper discussion on how to put one and one together. So a lot of things were discussed during the last panel, including how much should the government regulate, how much should it refrain from regulating. And before moving to Bolt, I actually also worked in the Estonian public sector, and we always used to say that legislation should be technology neutral, we shouldn't legislate too much. And this was the stand we always took whenever we were looking at EU regulation or our own regulation. And then I moved on to Bolt, and the first thing I heard from the policy team there was, we need to be regulated at the EU level. Otherwise, the EU market is so fragmented, we cannot enter a few of those markets. So what I learned from private sector is that in the public sector, we didn't listen to the private sector. And this is the biggest problem in any relationship, whether it's your private relationship, whether it's your business relationship, or whether it's the relationship between the public and the private sector. We must know mutual expectations, and we must know what the other part needs. And this is specifically why we are here today. And with me, I have an amazing panel of Estonian tech company CEOs, founders, co-founders, current someones, as opposed to former someones. And on my left side, we can start with Arti, who's the CEO of Cleveron. Then we have Taavi, who's the CEO of Salv. And then we have Hedi, who is the CEO and co-founder of one of the coolest companies known Cachet. So I'll ask you to introduce yourselves briefly, going the same round. Just introduce yourself, your company a bit, and how much do you actually interact with the public sector, and are they helpful at all?
Yes, so I'm active in Cleveron. I'm a CEO of Cleveron, and we are producing and developing smart parcel lockers and robots. And with this company, we are actively working together with national post companies. And another side of me is Clevon. So Clevon is developing self-driving vehicles, and in this company we are very actively working on legislative part of European governments, EU, and also together with US legislative offices.
Thank you. So a lot of legislation, which we're definitely going to get into, because this is something of interest to myself as well. But Taavi.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Taavi, and I'm also former technology company member. I used to work in Skype and TransferWise, and I was in the middle of building up these world-changing companies. So I know a bit of regulations from these days. But now I'm building my own company, which is called Salv. We are 5 years old, and we're building technologies for the banks and fintechs to stop financial crime, to be compliant, to comply with AML regulations, sanctions, and fraud fighting as well. So that's a really heavily regulated space here in Estonia, across Europe, and across the world, of course.
Super, thank you. Hedi.
I'm Hedi, CEO and co-founder of Cachet. So we are Insurtech and obviously regulated. So our main touch points today are connected with FSAs of different countries, but also obviously there were bigger regulations that are forming around it, and we are ensuring largely platform economy, which is also a very interesting sector and segment at the moment, where lots of new rules are being drawn up, both kind of European level, but also local level. So that's kind of the main touch points. History, when everybody talks about history, it's more on the banking and IT side, and seen a bit of that part of the collaboration with the state as well.
Super, thanks. So I'll start with a really generic question, and then let's see where this discussion will take us. And don't be afraid to be critical. I think I even read from the introduction to this panel that you are going to disrupt me and shake my world. So I'm ready to be shaken, and my world is ready to be stirred. So the very generic question is, what should we start doing in the public sector, and what should we stop doing in the public sector? Anything that pops to your mind related to our business or in general?
From my point of view, let's say every company has their own visions, goals, KPIs, metrics. But what I feel what is missing from, let's say, Estonia as a nation, what is our, let's say, long-term goal, what we want to achieve in general. I actually really liked when Estonia had goal to be among 5 richest countries in Europe. Yes, it was quite a crazy goal, but at least it was a goal. But last 10 years, I don't feel any goals. And when we don't have goal, then how we should know that or where we would move. So this is where I would start from.
We should manifest ourselves a vision. And I actually fully agree with you, because Estonia is known globally as the most digitally advanced society in the world. I mean, it's a nice slogan and marketing project to have, but being digital is not a goal in itself, right? I mean, the goal should be to be efficient. In Estonia, we're a small country. We need to be efficient for our users. who are our citizens and our companies. And if we don't work for them, then what are we doing, right? Taavi, what do you think?
Yeah, you took one of my idea already away, but like why it's important to set the vision and set the goal is actually when we're running our own companies, we have the mission and we have the vision. And that's what the team is focused on, and that's what was driving us. And we know if we're heading in the better place than we are right now. And like if the country doesn't have one, then it's like super, are we there in the end, like, or what's next? Or like that's super. As a citizen, for me, it's like super hard to be in this situation. And as an entrepreneur as well, like I'm constantly running my own business, but also I'm trying to figure out like how my business goals can actually help Estonia to go bigger and more well-known as a like strong AML country in the world, in my sense. But it's something that I feel that I could link my personal and professional activities against my country's vision where we want to be. So that's one thing we need to define. And what we should stop doing is actually like stop being so much stuck in the legacy procedures and legacy thinking. And I know that countries usually, like if the company lasts 10 years, 20 years, maybe 50 years, countries should last forever. And there is some level of legacy is definitely needed, and then some conservatism here. But actually, when we as entrepreneurs working under the Estonian legislation or some other legislations, then actually we need to keep introducing the idea to our regulators and parliaments that things can change much faster than they do. So like stop being stuck in the status quo, but actually get into the mode that change is a constant. And of course, the change can be slow, but it has to be constant. I think that's what we're missing right now.
Hedi, do you know maybe an example of a country that has a mission, or maybe someone who has developed its goals and where someone who has stood out for you?
That was actually exactly the point that I wanted to comment. It's very simple. No, it's actually a bit from the other angle. It's very simple to put yourself goals when you are either in a crisis or you want to build a country from the scratch. It's very simple to kind of project where you want to go. It's much harder when you're already in a quite a good welfare, like Estonia has reached. I'm not saying that it's impossible. So is it the question about only a vision or actually a narrative, which is a bit broader, which is actually combines everything that the world reflects back towards us, and putting more on the kind of understanding of how to continue that narrative further, not just something to strive for, but actually take where we are. Because let's be honest, there is tons of innovative ideas, tons of things that the government is doing very right, that the local companies are doing really well. It's a question how to just tie it as a one story that we can all believe in and continue working towards. So maybe that's one of the reflections. Maybe we are trying to find something that is already actually exists, but we can't word it very well.
Combine this into a proper story. The world needs stories. You wanted to interrupt before.
Yes, and actually I wanted to, let's say, praise Estonian offices because I see that Estonia is, or our offices are quite open-minded comparing with old Europe, who is quite like antique museum, who wants to, let's say, keep the legislation as it is, keep the processes as it has been for the past 20 years. And when you want to change something, then in the old Europe, it's quite hard to do. But in Estonia, when you want to change something, then it is possible. And our offices, public offices, they are really open-minded, at least in my experience.
Yeah, it's true. And like just to ask about examples, I think one really great example that I enjoy watching and being there in London, like as a financial center of the Europe, and that's like they have been there for a long time. They want to be there, and I think they have vision or something like that to be there in the future as well. And like throughout the Brexit, where people were forecasting that UK economy is going down, and actually the London as a financial center and now the like fintech center has stood up really strongly. And of course, it's like a lot of private sector is driving that, but actually public sector is really supporting. And like I think there were loads of great learnings from the back from the times when UK was part of the EU, like how the EU regulations and directives were applied in the local, like how directives were applied in the local regulations. Like if like in Estonia, in some like financial questions was the most conservative, like in the way how we implemented these in our laws. UK was the most liberal, and as a result of that, like many cool fintechs that are like now the world, some biggest fintechs are over there, regulated and have their main head offices because their legislation was the best, like entrepreneurship friendly as possible. So thanks to the fact that UK or London seems to have the vision that they want to be and stay the financial capital of the Europe. And there is like important caveat that other countries and other cities cannot usually copy-paste that. Like Paris wants to be the same as London, or like maybe Tallinn. If we would say that we want to be like London, actually it's not possible to copy these kind of things. We need to find our own like niche or way where we want to be.
How about Lithuania? They want to be the fintech hub of the European Union.
Yes, that's a good example that they are good fintech hub for like more risk taking companies. So like there's like an interesting I think branding or positioning that if you're like risk adverse but like innovative, which is I think possible, then you should go to Brussels maybe. Like Brussels is like a safe place, but actually a lot of the good strong fintechs after the Brexit moved into the regulatory body into the Brussels, which is like nice place to be. But actually Vilnius sets themselves as opposite to the Brussels, and they're like really like I think cryptos are there, like crazy ambitious fintechs are there, like coming up, and like really well-known names as well. So they have but again that's not the private sector who's driving that only, but it's also like their central bank is supporting that, their like banking associations is behind that. So it's like PR, their regulators, people. I'm not sure if they're doing today, but they used to actually call to the prospect private companies that hey, come to Vilnius and let's talk, and just come and set up your office and your license from here. So the public sector did active sales work to acquire like companies into their country. So that was a great example how it's possible to do.
Thanks. Eddie,
but if it actually goes even further, if you take what Vilnius did right, they brought in lots of back offices. You can argue with them if they like that example or not, but that's a fact. So lots of big banks like Barclays, Swedbank, etc., brought their back offices from their bank to Vilnius, and there lots of people were actually kind of got into the banking world from tech side. But the example is similar. If you take Ireland, they actually subsidized and made lots of effort to bring the back offices of big five, etc., to also to Ireland. So it's more on the question if we talk about what are these kind of single, concrete, focused acts, and what is the kind of what will be the future development of that if you bring the Vilnius or Lithuanian example.
And you gave actually a good indicated good point that some people might not like it. Like maybe in Lithuania, more conservative people don't like that they are like a fintech hub or the riskiest fintech hub.
This was my next question to you, actually.
Or the Ireland or Dublin, they when being there, like looking from distance, it's like a cool way to grow the economy. But actually, more innovative people in Dublin, they are not maybe great fans of being a back office country. So again, like it definitely creates some tensions between different groups of people as well. And if we in Estonia happen to select one direction or other, then definitely it creates some opposition, which might be quite strong to that.
So building on this, we've mentioned UK and Lithuania and so forth. You've all started your companies in Estonia. Is there a reason why? Would you have done it if you were not from Estonia? What perks does Estonia actually offer if you want to launch a company? Because in UK, it's as easy, if not easier, than actually in Estonia to start a company.
From my point of view, in global scale, it basically doesn't matter if you are in Viljandi, as Cleveron is based, or in Tallinn or UK, because our footprint is all over the world, and we don't see Estonia as, or we see it as a really great place to be. A lot of talent, open-minded people, so with whom we can conquer the world.
But you also produce your own talent.
Exactly, in Cleveron Academy.
Is this something that the Estonian government missed out on? Are we not producing, produce is a bad word. Are we not educating enough talent, so you had to figure out your own way how to do this?
Yes, we launched the Cleveron Academy with the goal to have more people on self-driving technology area, because this is totally new area in the world. So basically, when you have junior developer who is, I don't know, 18 years old, and he is really, or she is really eager to learn about this. So when she has 1 or 2 year experience, she or he is already top talent of the world in this area, because no one knows about it. And when we take 2 major Estonian universities in Tallinn and Tartu, their thinking is quite low regarding innovation. They are teaching how things were, I don't know, 50 years ago, but what we in Cleveland Academy are doing is that we say that it's a problem, that vehicles on the streets needs drivers today. How we should get rid of the drivers. No one knows what is the exact answer, but we are here to figure out together. And this is what brings the sparkle to the eyes to the people.
No, this is the spark in the eyes is. I always say that if I wake up and I don't have a spark in my eye anymore, then it means I need to move on to the next job. So this is crucial. But how about you two? Would you have opened up your companies in Estonia if you weren't from Estonia?
Good question. Well, fortunately, we were from Estonia, so
fortunately for us.
Yeah. No, but we also have a company in Ireland. So if you ask, looking back for which way I would go, being I don't know a Swedish or someone else, then probably I would choose Estonia because still I've been bringing that example lots of time. I didn't sign a single physical paper as running my companies until I opened up a company in Ireland. So rest is history in that sense. So those kind of things are something Estonians really take for granted. That it's just so easy to still manage and run everything digitally. And I think the only wish would be that to have that fully throughout Europe, that we all can trust and know there is a similar framework that is fully in place. Everything works, but still, the ease of everything in Estonia is next level. But yeah, we also have a company in Ireland, and in Poland. So both cases are.
I lived in Poland. I love the country, but I just recently had to hire a tax lawyer to do my taxes because I lived there. And then I had to pay this person money, and then I had to send my documents regarding how much I made. And then finally she did my taxes, and then I received an email. Your overpaid tax will come back to you before end of June this year. In Estonia, it's a bit faster. So, but how about you? Would you have opened up your company?
Yeah, it's like this, like founding a company online and all the tech stuff, and that's like for us so much business as usual that we're not thinking even about this stuff. So it's like, when founding a company in another country, then we find out that okay, there is actual problem over there, but it's still like one of the investment of time and people and money. I think maybe like looking back from now, like as you mentioned talent or discussed about talent, like what kind of talent is available, then for technology companies, definitely the highly skilled people, experienced people coming from other like world-changing tech companies. And it's not only about engineers per se, but like in my space, again, people who have really strong experience in the financial space and financial crime fighting space and like other areas as well. Like this talent pool is really, really strong argument for me why I'm still here and most of our team is here. And like it's related to that is also the smallness of the community or closeness of the people. So every time when I have some like problems or like worries with my like team or culture or like HR processes or whatever, like how to grow really scalable startup business, then actually I know whom to call, or like I know that okay, some friends or former colleagues who had the same challenges or similar challenges 5 or 10 years ago, they're close and they're part of the community. And this community is not locked, that it's available only for people who are born here, but actually the community is open and really welcoming. I've been speaking with people from Denmark and they're also a small country and part of Nordics, and like culturally you might think that come on, it's like should be very similar, and same with Sweden, but actually it's not. Like over there are like local competition going on between different regions, or like people are not so close, and the community is so not so much tied together, which I understand if it doesn't work in London or in San Francisco, but actually it even doesn't work so well in between like Malmö and Stockholm, but between Tallinn and Tartu it works. So, and it doesn't matter like if you have gone to Tartu University or not. But yeah, it's like it's always still regarding to this founding company digitally, and my first office, official office address wasn't even in Viljandi. It was like in the middle of nowhere in the forest at my home, where the wolves and the bears are running around the house, and like officially the startup's first headquarters was over there, and that was working. So these are like cool stories again, which like you don't need to be physically in London to found a world-changing company actually.
Yeah, exactly. So you've been very nice so far for some reason, but now I mean roll up your sleeves and think you are the current, not the former IT Minister of Estonia as of tomorrow. What's the first thing you're going to change to make lives easier for your companies here to start, to grow, to gather investments, whatever are the main obstacles? So what would you change first?
Most easiest thing is to regulate less. So as Taavi said in the first panel, so most of the companies don't need anything from the government. So less is more.
So I should just pack my bags and Eddie.
I would actually like to pick on your own comment when you started. It's so what is the in terms of less regulation and more. So I think we love digital single market. It's a great. I think it's a question of if we want to incubate more successful and innovative companies from Estonia, then definitely look all the regulation through from an innovation perspectives. Mm-hmm. So there is, for example, very clearly in my area, there's a new traffic or motor regulation which is trying to. Some companies are trying to put it back a bit to the old school history and just and using a bit directive as an example, but obviously every directive you can interpret very differently. So I think it's a very, very kind of strong statement, very strong kind of point of view, but those kind of things should not be allowed to do, especially if you want to, let's say, build a more person-centric state. Should be the one that users are the ones that win from it, not kind of benefiting some very concrete company or segment or something. It's more like having this kind of North Star, as a popular way to say in a startup world, who we want to have the most benefits. And this is something that I would say every regulation that comes in that state relooks, it should be looked from that perspective. And the other angle, exactly how to help companies like us or support. Let's try to then figure out how to do it across Europe, how to kind of unify many things that are worthwhile unifying. Is it the digital signing, or is it something else that actually helps? You know, passporting license is beautiful. It's fantastic. It helps out, you know, and things like that are great. So let's do more of those and less of other things that actually push us back to the history.
Yeah. Taavi, Minister of Entrepreneurship.
I think there are two dimensions. Like one is like short-term and high impact, and the other is like long-term high impact changes. Like starting with the last one, like how to build organization or public sector in a way that it's constantly more and more supportive towards the entrepreneurs and like entrepreneurship and supporting the companies. And it's not about one-off legal changes. It's about organizational change, and like it's like things like who is in the advisory board of some government-owned entities which are responsible for the economic things. Like, are these people coming from politics, or are they coming from the public sector, or are they also coming from the private sector? And which part of the private sector are these advisors? Part of the technology sector, or part of the old school technologies? So, and this kind of changes, like equipping government institutions more with the people from private sector and like doing it systematically, I think that will have much more longer term and bigger impact, which we shouldn't underestimate. But there is a short-term things, as you mentioned as well, from your space, and like I can also call out the like legislation around CRET, or like a AI legislation, AI systems regulation, which was like discussed 5 years ago, and then it was made like a joke, but actually now it's a real thing, and people are worried about the GPT, Chat GPT and AI and others. Like it's coming, we're afraid, but actually I must argue that in this space we should like regulate more than more reasonably and more like better regulation than the European wants to call out. We have expertise and we have knowledge and we have gone through the failures. So like it would be quick win to become the center of the AI like hub or tester. And also like similar thing with Web3 technologies or like a crypto space. Like we opened up our market and we were like as previous panel discussed also, like we were half of the global crypto companies were like at least officially founded licensed here in Estonia. And of course some issues happened which like risks are always here, like when we take allow people to innovate more. But actually now we like shifted our focus to the other side, like we're super conservative and super closed down, but actually we still have the brand and we have the talent, so we can open up again in much smarter way our things to the Web3 developers and become again the hub of the global innovation in that regard. So this is like so easy to implement. Of course there's like things that we can learn from the previous failures to make it better and more more mature. But this opportunity is here, and it's like one minister can easily do that within like one year, and that's it. So
yeah. So just one brief comment, and then yeah.
So to continue my first idea that for 90% of the companies, I think less is more, and for the let's say small number of companies or segments, yes, we need strong regulations regarding the AI, what you bring, for example, and also for let's say self-driving vehicles. We as a Clevon, we got the first license in the whole world to drive basically freely without restriction on the public roads in Estonia. So in every city we can freely drive with our self-driving vehicles. But now here coming to, let's say, when I would be minister, what is Estonian vision where these self-driving vehicles are going to be in the future, how Estonia should benefit from it, if we should build, I don't know, test grounds in Estonia, if we should build some kind of legislations to attract also other self-driving companies to Estonia to test here, and not to just test, to go to the public streets, to offer the services, etc. And now bringing parallel to Mr. President, what he said is that public offices, they should listen right people, and I think
you're the right person.
Yes, I think definitely the innovative people, but not just in Estonia, but in the whole world, to look what the world has to offer to us, and to think really open-minded and with long term.
Yeah, I really want to discuss regulation more, and we're going to get back to that. But in between, we've received a bunch of questions via Slido. And one of the questions, now you can put back your hats of entrepreneurs, is spill some beans. What is a crazy vision you have for your company, which you haven't realized yet because the legal system or the public may not be ready? Do you have anything in your drawer?
In my case, it's very easy. Like, just I need time to pitch it. But basically, in the banking sector, like you're all customers of the banks or fintechs, or like it's a huge sector, and like there are like a lot of technologies, but actually it's moving and holding our money back and forth. And unfortunately, there are also really bad people moving their money through the financial system. And these bad people communicate, people who are laundering the money, or like or the oligarchs, or like people like human trafficking proceeds, or like this is like really dirty money which is being moved through our banks and through the rest of the banks in Europe and the world. And these criminals communicate with each other, like they're like a decentralized network which they're forming in terms of like which institutions they're using, and which institutions and countries are stronger and weaker. But alternatively, financial institutions are working in silos. Each of them is looking only at their own data, their own customers, their own transactions, and there is no communication. So ultimately, individual institutions are trying to beat like decentralized network, which is like impossible. And like in my vision, we are connecting financial institutions into the common network, like Skype is a good example, or like blockchain technology. It's not about technology, but it's about like individual members being connected in trustworthy network and being able to exchange some bits and bytes between themselves in order to resolve beat some much bigger problem. And that's like classical problem, as you ask. Like there are regulations which are telling that GDPR or people privacy data should be dealt really carefully. They're not saying that you shouldn't move data around, but you should be very careful how to move it around. Each country and each institution has their own understanding from legal point of view, from data protection point of view, how to do that. So, and going through this hassle to explain that, okay, there is a technology and there is a business problem and there is a legal environment, and let's find the best balance between those two, because ultimately our goal is to beat financial crime and stop this war and stop our grandparents losing their life savings and stuff like that. And all you need to do is actually connect your institutions together into the common crime fighting network. And this is if we're able to do that, then we're all safe in the world.
That's a beautiful thought. Hedi?
So from our side, what we would love to see in some years' time to happen is that persons will be a bit more equal kind of parties around the table, in digital table, when we talk about acquiring and using different financial services. So which means that all the banks and all the insurers, etc., should be actually running after great customers, not actually a bit vice versa. And what I mean by that is we all leave massive amount of digital data behind us. And why can't we kind of upgrade all the insurance world and all the financial world so that it is even further personalized in terms of my behavior, my activities? Why do I have to pay still travel insurance? I've been traveling for, 20 years, 10 days a month, 15 days a month on average, and almost no claims. So things like that actually should start to kind of move a bit more around the person and how they behave, and this is something that should be taken much more into consideration, not just the data used for great advertising and offerings, but it's more really the dialogue that should start from there. And we are moving there fast, and why Cachet is very interesting in platform economy as such is this is as close as it already gets. So everybody has a digital presence and kind of log behind them. And that's why we are very fascinated in creating the insurance there. And we believe that in some years' time, it's going to look very, very different.
Fully agree with you. And I think the personalization of services is not only what the private sector can do, it's also what the public sector can do, right? So if we asked what's the mission of Estonia, then somewhat it can be to offer personalized services. Because I always say governments are so lazy. I mean, if you are a private sector company, in order to get clients, you have to offer them the best service. If you're a government, you don't have to do because unless the citizen moves, they're going to still have to use your services. So that's why companies have to be much less lazy than governments.
Let me help you out with that. Even if you're not acquiring more customers as a government, what you can do is increase the lifetime value of the customers that they're bringing. If you're maximizing taxes, not maximizing population. That's easy.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's actually something that I see separates growing startups versus large corporations. Large corporations cannot grow anymore too much, and they keep upselling and cross-selling their other products to get more value out from their clients. And then we as startups, we're mostly focusing on huge, fast growth, and we know that we will monetize it later.
So countries are like corporations, but they could be more like startups.
They should be corporations who are focused on actual
delivering value.
Delivering value and getting paid for that. Taxes.
Or enabling the startups.
Enabling. This is a good word. Yeah. Arti?
I totally agree with this, that if there is the value that let's say, public sector employees would gain if they would do something successfully, then they would be more eager to think out of the box and to take risks. But today it is when they will take the risks. When it goes successfully, then they will take good job, and that's it. But when the things don't roll out well, then you will probably get fired or not elected. So.
Okay, we have about 1 minute left. So last question to each of you. You said you would be fine if the government would just set aside and let you do your thing, right? So what do you think is the problem? Is it the bureaucracy? Is it too many people in the public sector trying to do something? Is it trying to run a country like a company or not trying to run the country as a company? So name 1-2 things that you think are the biggest issues in why governments fail in terms of innovation.
I would say that actually I'm not that negative. Like I'm optimistic and positive. And like what I see, what is the strength is that actually in our country it's possible to work with the governments. It's possible to come to your ministry or like other ministries and explain the business case and value for not only for my own company but actually for the whole industry and society. And there are like smart people who think along and they are changing the laws. They're helping us. They're like establishing the contacts with their peers in other countries. On the EU Commission level, even for us as a small startup, it's fairly easy to deliver our messages thanks to our foreign ministry and their people. So actually it's super positive to be in this small country. And to answer your question, the sad thing would be that if there are ministries or like public sector which is closing down and trying to build walls around them, that's really bad. But if the walls are like getting thinner and lower as they are right now, then it makes lives much easier. And I'm not expecting government to do everything for me, remove all the laws, but actually work with me. And this is actually happening pretty well already.
And I would add from my side to change the mindset of from, let's say, creating the barriers, but instead of it enabling the services.
Sorry, just like I have like really nice story to tell, like Estonian Data Protection Inspectorate, which is like super threatening organization, like in not this one, but actually in the rest of the world. People are afraid, or private sector or companies are afraid to speak with them because like they will restrict everything and they will write out fines. In Estonia, these people said that, okay, let's work together, let's find the solutions. And now they are taken as experts, probably public sector experts across Europe, and they're asked to give a talk, how did they do this change between the banks and the public sector to enable the communication. So like that's a really strong success story actually we see.
So Estonian political action is 4 years. So there's 2 ways. What are the projects that we can deliver in 4 years? So make the delivery organization as efficient as possible or have very long-term few things that run through without politics. And I think this is probably how we would do in a bigger organization. So I think both of those things to work on, and I think that could be one of the answers.
Super. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone with me in this panel. Thank you for listening us online. And I think what we can take away from it is still the question of mindset. I mean, all of the things that we discussed exist in the world. We can make the change as long as we have the mindset to actually change things. Don't work in silos, don't build walls, and listen to what your private sector wants. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and I hope to see you soon again.
Yeah, man, thank you from Accelerate Estonia as well. Thank you for the panelists. What we learned today, subjective. We heard the same things, but I think we learned different things. Very interesting. This definitely won't be our last online conference like it was. And thank you really for taking time, because for me as a former startupper know that how difficult it is to find even 1 or 2 hours during the day. Now, as a government officer, I actually know it's the same, that it's not easy to take enough. But thank you very much. If you still have some questions to us or for panelists, then send them. We try to find answers, and then we can go on. Okay, good luck. And also, one very important thing, apply to Accelerate Estonia. We can help you if you need government. We can make things move. Thank you.